All right, Ryan Curley, Dean Legge, another edition of Riding Home. And, it doesn't look, Ryan, right now like Jalen Carter or A.D. Mitchell are going to play against the Gators. It does look like Smile Munden is going to play. I think that's really important for Smile to play coming into these two games against the Gators and Vols back to back. But, I think we'll see Jalen, you know, I, I don't know about sooner than later, but we'll see him. I mean, Kirby was not indicating that the way I put it, but it seems like he's further along than AD. But anyway, your thoughts from the Tuesday night appearance from Kirby?
Yeah, based on what he said, that was last night. It sounded to me like Jalen Carter was closer to playing than AD Mitchell is, and that isn't really what we've been hearing the last 2 weeks. And it was the ankle that Kirby talked about with AD Mitchell, which he had, that's something that now we've gone back and forth on. First it was the ankle, then it was the thumb is the reason why he didn't play that game, I believe against Auburn or Missouri. I can't remember which one it was where he injured the thumb during
It
warmups. I
was
think it was Missouri.
no, you're
And
no, you're no, you're thinking of Auburn or Vanderbilt, one of the two.
then Kirby mentioned the ankle again last night. He didn't say anything about the thumb, so maybe the ankle is bothering him again. High ankle sprains are no joke. I think you and I have probably both had those before. So I'm assuming you play basketball a lot. You never
I
had an ankle
don't.
sprain?
High ankle is different than ankle. I don't remember. The worst I ever got injured was I couldn't move my arm above like here, and they told me I could practice, and I was like, I don't see how I can practice, to be honest. But anyway, go ahead.
Yes, but I don't think either of them play against Fort. And I didn't think Jalen Carter was going to play against Fort anyway. Up until yesterday, I thought A.D. Mitchell was closer to playing than Jalen Carter is. I think you probably see them both get mixed in against Tennessee, but do you let them go full throttle if they're really coming off his injuries against in a really big matchup? I think that's kind of a decision that happens during the day and the couple of days before that in practice. Smile Mondon will be very important, I think, against
Tennessee
Anthony
specifically.
Richardson specific. I was thinking
Well,
against
I think
Florida
Hooker. I
specifically.
think dealing with Hooker is going to be tougher than dealing with Richardson, but they both are concerning in terms of quarterback run.
Yeah, Richardson is the one that hits the home runs when he takes off, though. And
Yeah,
Smile
that's
Mondon is
true.
a very fast side to side linebacker, someone you definitely want out there, someone that I think was impressive in his first few games before he got hurt. We talk about that linebacker room was my biggest concern was that linebacker room. How do you replace those three guys? Those are three top 3 round picks. One of them was a first round pick in
Right.
your linebacker core, and they replaced them pretty smoothly with Jamon Dumas Johnson and Smile Mondon. The freshman Jalen Walker is getting some reps there late in the game. Trezor Marshall, when he's healthy, gets mixed in. So Smile Mondon's presence matters a lot, especially against in these next 2 weeks where you're playing quarterbacks who are a threat to get big plays on the ground.
Well, Richardson, you can't let Richardson loose.
No,
I mean,
no,
that guy, he'll
can't.
be in the end zone, and we saw this last year. Um, I'm trying to see. I've talked about this a lot. These images, they both actually are from you. Oops, in the book,
Is that
you
the
can pick up.
strip from Nolan Smith?
Yeah, I don't know how he stripped this ball.
That play, yeah, that play. I
Do
remember
you?
looking at through the. I remember looking at it through the lens, and I just thought they were going to call it down because
Yeah.
they were up for so long, and then all of a sudden, people were just looking around for the ball, and I can't remember who jumped on it.
Well, I think
It
he
may have
straight
been
up
Nolan.
ripped it. No,
You
yeah,
think he straight up just
Nolan.
pulled it out cleanly?
I, there are 9 Georgia football players. There are 9 defenders in this picture. There's
Yeah.
4 on top of Richardson. Kendrick, Keeley, Jalen Carter. I can't tell who that. Quay Walker, and then Jordan are all in this image, and that's Lewis Seen right there. And I don't know who the other 2 guys are. I can't see them. There's no way to make out their number, but it may be that. I mean, Nolan's got a hold of the ball a little bit right here already,
Yeah.
a little
Yeah.
bit. But I'll tell you, I didn't know what in the world had happened. I think at that point Georgia was up 3-0 or 10-0. I can't remember, man, but
That
they
was
just
right. That was the beginning of the pop. at the
Yeah,
end of the
because
second quarter.
two plays later or a play later, um, it was it was a couple plays later because it was third and a little bit or second and a little bit, and then this happened off of
The Trayvon Walker tip.
Trayvon Walker tip, and here comes Nolan with the ball again. Um,
He was
I think
huge in that game, Nolan Smith. That was a big day for him. But collectively as a defense, even though it wasn't a shutout because they had the late touchdown, and it wasn't, the offense didn't score 50 points, but that was like a 34-7 game. That was domination on the defensive side of the ball.
oh
That was
terrible.
one of the several games where they just swallowed their opponent. And I think a collective effort is what you're going to want to see against an offense that Florida runs, where it's kind of can be unpredictable, where a lot of their really good plays happen in disaster when Anthony Richardson decides he's going to scramble. Kirby talked about that a little bit on Monday, how it's not the design runs that are killing you, it's the when he decides to scramble and make something
Right,
happen. Those are the runs that are going for 50, 60, 70 yards. So look, you're out another defender too, and Dan Jackson. You're out a guy that
right.
has played some significant snaps. That's some of your defensive back depth. He wasn't really a starter at this point, but still, it matters. So I think it's going to have to be another collective effort, like we saw last year. N'Kobe Dean with the pick six, Trayvon Walker, Nolan Smith, guys were flying all over the place.
Hey, listen, you can still grab the book, pick it up. The link is down below. The holidays are going to be here before you know it, and I do not want to run out of books. You don't want that to happen to you either. I don't. I think when you were talking a second ago about Florida being, I think, sort of up and down defensively. Excuse me, offensively. They're not consistent. They don't have a consistent quarterback. They're one of the worst teams in the country throwing the football at 92nd compared to everybody else. But their defense is a disaster. They are, um, you can run for almost 200 yards a game on them. They're going to get slaughtered. This Florida team is going to have a real hard time sticking with this Georgia team. And um, on third down, they are defensively. They are one of the worst third. They are the second to worst defensively stopping third down. Ryan, they allow almost 200 yards a game. They are in total defense. They are near the bottom. They are not at the bottom. They are within 20 of the bottom of college football. These are just things that at Florida that just shouldn't be the case. And right now, I know that they are going through a lot. If you want to put it that way, they had a close win against Utah, then they lost by 10. These those Their first three games were at home. They had to survive South Florida. I watched that game. That was the night South Carolina was destroyed by Georgia. I need to watch them play Tennessee. That's probably what I'll do at lunch today. And then, ever since the Tennessee game, they played a Sunday game against Eastern Washington because of the hurricane. They've been pretty underwhelming the last two times they've played. I mean, their game against Mizzou, they were tied at the half. This is a home game for Florida because people will say, well, Georgia struggled against Missouri. Yeah, in a night game where they turned the ball over however many times. This was a Florida team that, you should routine Missouri at home, and they didn't do that. And then I think it was very troubling for Florida folks to see the Gators give up 45 points to LSU. I mean, at home, and that was bad. So I think the Gators are in real trouble on this deal.
Yeah, I mean, we talked like we said last week. I think the record's not really what they are because they have a positive record, and to me, this is not. It's just not a good football team, and it's not close in any of the three phases of football,
No,
right? But for the
no,
special teams, Georgia's played really well on special teams. Georgia's played really. Again, they're averaging giving up less than 10 points per game.
yeah.
Georgia's offense, as much as they have struggled at times, is putting up around 40 points per game. So this Georgia team
This
is more. They're
narrative though
just
of struggling, Ryan. Let's delve into that a little bit. Um, they have the number they have the number two offense in the country.
yeah.
So there's that, and they're struggling. And then in terms of scoring offense, uh, they have one of the best of those too. I don't want to get the number wrong, but They're averaging over 40 points a game. They're at 41. They're 42 points a game. They're the number 8 offense in terms of scoring in the country. I mean, it's not insignificant. I mean, Tennessee is scoring 50 points a game. Ohio State is scoring 50 points a game. Um, Texas Christian, Oklahoma, they're both at around 44, 44. Alabama's at 43. Michigan, Georgia, Michigan, and Oregon are all around the 42 mark. I think we saw what happened with Oregon when they played Georgia. They did not at all score 42 points. And I'm trying to think of other teams that Georgia's played. Like for instance, South Carolina. South Carolina right now is averaging 33 points a game. They scored what? They scored a touchdown against the Dogs. Who else have they played? Auburn. Auburn's pretty
Auburn
terrible.
scored a touchdown. South
But it's
Carolina crept up into the top 25.
well, I mean, they continue to win. I don't know. I mean, Auburn scored averages 22 points a game. They scored a touchdown. Vanderbilt averages 26 points a game. Did they score? Was that a shutout?
That was 55
Okay,
zip.
so they scored 25 points fewer than they normally do. You're typically watching when Georgia plays. The only team that they didn't really hold down in terms of their average was Kent State, which is at 28 a game. They scored 22, I think it was, and Missouri. Now I've gotten off the subject of Georgia's offense, but they all play. Like we're going to get to this point where this Tennessee Georgia matchup will come up here soon, and Tennessee probably does have the best offense in the country, but you got to play defense, and that's going to be a real problem for the Gators this week. Let me just say this too. When you look at Anthony Richardson in terms of passing the football, there are several games where he is just not effective at all. Against Kentucky, he did not have 150 yards passing. Against South Florida, he did not have 150. He had 112 yards passing. Against Missouri, he had 66 yards passing. He has
It's not
nine.
going to cut it, man. It's not going to cut it.
He has more interceptions than touchdowns. Um, it's just not. You
That's
know,
what blows my mind with these draft gurus starting to tick me off
oh,
online. Is this a top 3 quarterback prospect in the draft? He doesn't throw the ball. Even Lamar Jackson threw the ball, and he was a Heisman
you
contender,
can't
or he
compare
was a
this
Heisman
guy.
winner.
This
No, 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 no.
guy's not even in
But
Lamar's universe.
that's the point. Is Anthony Richardson's name gets thrown out there with all of these like all-time great college quarterbacks, and so I don't understand what am I missing. The dude can't play. He can't play quarterback effectively. I'm not saying he's not a good football player. I'm saying he's not a really good quarterback.
What he play? He
He
plays quarterback. I mean, I don't. I
well,
watched. I
I mean,
watched. Well, listen. I watched Luka Doncic. I think I'm saying his last name correctly last night. He's a center, but he plays point guard half the time, right? He's bringing the ball up the
oh,
court.
he's just out there.
I know, but my point is that in football,
That's basketball, bro.
you play a particular position, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
your your quarterback can't play tight end, unfortunately for Tim Tebow, and you got to play quarterback, and that's the challenge right now. Is like Spencer Rattler, he's got to play quarterback better. I mean, you have to play the position, and that to me is what you look at Stetson, C.J. Stroud, definitely Bryce Young. These guys play quarterback, you know, and I think with Richardson, the big thing is, and I'm not smart enough to say, but I think the big thing with Richardson is the measurables are all there. The NFL is really about a measurable thing, or a measurable league, but you've got to be able to play the position. I am not convinced at this stage that he can play the position. I'm certain he can throw the football, and I'm certain he can run. I mean, Dwan Mathis, this guy is Dwan Mathis on steroids in terms of physical attributes, but you got to be able to play that spot. And if you don't, you know, I, I have nothing bad to say about Jacob Eason, but he is a very good cautionary tale. People at Georgia, I remember, would not shut up about Jacob Eason forever. This guy's gonna save things. That's not how it works. First of all. Secondly, uh, the measurables only do you so much good if you're not executing the position. And that's what you need. You need guys who will execute their position, whatever that position is. These guys that I'm mentioning just happen to play quarterback. Jacob is still in the league. I think he's with the Panthers. But Anthony Richardson, in order to go on and have a successful career in the NFL, um, you got to play the position, and he's not doing a great job of that.
No, and we watched last year him not have I mean, zero effectiveness really against
Against the
Georgia.
Dogs.
Yeah,
And
yeah. I
why
mean,
did they start him in that game? I don't understand
I
that.
that was a weird week. I feel like leading up to that, I don't think if I remember correctly, I don't think we were sure who was starting
Right.
for Florida heading into that game.
Yeah.
And at that point, I think they were just trying to mix things up. But I mean, you saw what happened last year. Then he was not effective against Georgia. Who's the best defense Anthony Richardson's faced this year?
Utah. Well, I'll go
And
back
that
and
was his
look just
best
real quick.
game.
I
That
mean,
was his best game,
I
right? I mean,
guess Kentucky hasn't played. Listen, Missouri's got a good defense. I'm just going to tell you
hmm
straight up. People, they can say whatever they want about Missouri and the Georgia Missouri game. I mean, that he had 66 yards passing against Missouri, I got to tell you, is not shocking to me. Missouri's scoring defense is 50th in the country, 23 points a game. But total defense, they are a top 20, 22nd in the country in total defense. They're a good defense. Utah is physical. Kentucky is physical. I mean, when you turn of just straight up total defense, I think the answer to your question is Missouri. Utah's 37th. Kentucky is 14th. So it'd be Kentucky, and they didn't score against Kentucky.
I
I
mean,
mean,
that's my point when he's facing, and that's really the point that we make here when teams face teams like Georgia for the first time.
yeah,
Oh, they've had a lot of success. Well, have you really played a monster like a Georgia defense? Because that's what Georgia's defense has become the last 2 years is a monster to deal with. So it's stuff that we'll talk about next week with Hendon Hooker because he certainly hasn't had to deal with something like that quite yet. Alabama's
his
defense is not close to Georgia's, so
no,
they've
no.
they've had it somewhat easy as far as their schedule. It's the same conversation about Ohio State, and with Anthony Richardson, it's just one of those things where I just don't see it. I just don't. I feel like I've been kind of one of the louder voices for that. I just don't really see it with him. And
Okay,
yeah, he does make big plays, and he might make a big play or two in this game. He probably will actually, but is he going to make enough plays with his arm to beat Georgia? I doubt that highly.
he was 14 of 35 for 143 yards with two interceptions against Kentucky. That's just not good enough. He was 8 of 14 against Mizzou for 66 yards. He had a touchdown and an interception in that game. He was not playing winning football at the beginning of the season, and it took him until the Eastern Washington game to score a touchdown throwing it. So, I mean, I'm not here to run the guy down. I don't know him. I don't have anything bad. I don't know him at all. But in terms of production, no, it's not there. I think the other thing too, Ryan, about this game. I'm curious your thoughts on this, just briefly. Um, what is your view on Georgia, Florida staying or leaving Jacksonville? Where are you on this?
I've been kind of neutral just because I think some traditions in college football are getting stripped away with all of the new changes and all of the new TV deals and all of the conference movement. So part of me is like, well, I really, I hope this game stays, but I think the power that a home and home series would have between, I mean, these teams aren't playing in each other's city. I have no reason to go to Gainesville, Florida at all, ever. I've never been there.
Right.
And that's Georgia's arch rival. I mean, I imagine a night kick in Athens with Florida. The town would go crazy. even if both teams were not amazing, it would be.
Yeah, I
I
don't
think
know
it would
about
be
that.
special to see. Man, especially that first time. I
Yeah.
think I do think it'll be special to see. I like the idea of the home and home. I do. But it's just I think how much would that benefit recruiting? I know that's Kirby's like biggest thing with it. Is that really going to put it over the top? We're talking about one weekend.
Right.
I mean, I don't really, I don't know because I'm not a recruiter or anything, but we're talking about like one weekend. Is that really hurting recruiting that much? To where, I mean, you're getting all these top three classes. So uh, that argument, so I've been kind of neutral. I realize I've just talked in circles about it. I've been kind of neutral, but
Well,
I do think
it
the idea is
is.
really cool. I think the idea of it being a home and home, I think it'd be electric most years
Oh,
when
I
the
think
teams are
so
good.
for sure. Yeah. Let me just say this. You said you talked in circles. I mean, it's not a simple thing. First of all, you have a situation where the league is about to go to 9 games. It certainly looks like because college football
Yeah.
playoffs is going to go to 12. And I wonder. Um, First of all, I am skeptical that the game will move. Just that's just me. For a lot of different reasons. I've been around long enough to have experienced the hand wringing. You know, when Georgia is always this way about it, but I do think that I think it's improved. I think it was not good for a long time. I still think it's not great. I think that the event itself needs a point person. It doesn't feel like there's a person. I think someone else should be running the game besides the University of Florida, and that's really what it is on the back end. But that's kind of inside baseball. The traffic's always a disaster. Um, I think that I will be disappointed if they changed it. I don't think they will, but if they did, there are reasons to do it. There are plenty of reasons to do it. I think the back end of that is though that Georgia over a 10-year period um, in this game makes about $20 million more than they would otherwise, and that's a 10-year period. And people will be like, 20 million, that's not that much. I mean, I don't know what world you're living in. $20 million over a 10-year period is a lot of money for Georgia. That's a ton of money. Their most expensive employee is Kirby Smart. He makes 10 million a year. So um, if they and that's just Georgia that makes that, and that's at the current level. My suspicion is that would go up with a new contract, but um, they also have not used a sponsorship at any time. Ryan in this game in this rivalry has never used it. Southwest Bell used to be um, the title sponsor for, if I'm not mistaken, Southwest Bell was, and there have been sponsors for Rivalry. So I think to me, a lot of the stupidity that Georgia used to have to go through, they don't anymore. The money has made more sense lately. I'm skeptical that they will change it, but um, if they do, there's reasons, but the reasons are not as compelling anymore because now basically every year your home slate is going to be Auburn and LSU or Alabama, or it's going to be, you know, Tennessee and Texas and Oklahoma. I mean, like you want big games at home, you've got big games at home.
They're going to
That's
happen regardless. They're going to happen
yeah.
regardless.
I will take one thing you said. I'm not as convinced of. I won't say I disagree with it. I'm not as convinced. Auburn is, of course, always a huge social weekend. Georgia, Florida is a huge social weekend, but I think it's more the schools don't really melt together the same way that Auburn and Georgia do. They're kind of doing different things. Um, so I think the game with the Gators in Athens would not be the same social event that Auburn, Georgia, or even South Carolina, Georgia is.
No, and part of that is because of distance, right? I mean,
Totally.
Auburn and
Yeah.
Georgia are only 3 to 3.5 hours away from each other, and a lot of people know each other in high school and stuff like that.
Most
And they,
people from Atlanta don't go to Florida.
Florida, yeah, exactly. So there wouldn't be as much as a blend there as far as knowing people. I don't know a single person that goes to Florida.
Right.
I don't even think I'm acquainted with someone that goes to Florida, and that's not on purpose. It's just how it is. I know a handful of people that go to Auburn.
Right.
You got frat beach and all that. There's a lot of like extracurriculars around the weekend that
That's
people
the
love
other
about
thing
it.
about Florida.
That
Yeah,
would that just
that's
go
it.
away,
Oh, of
Would
course.
that
Of course
so
that would
people
go
would
away. What are you talking about?
so people would be upset about that.
I mean, so one other thing that I think folks, this is ingrained in the school at Georgia. Fall break is has traditionally been the week of Georgia, Florida. Now I don't know if it still is or not or what, but is it this week?
Yeah, our fall break is Friday,
Well, there you
technically.
go.
So, and
There
that's
you
when everyone's
go.
at the beach.
I
Yeah.
mean, so it's what it
So there's a
is.
lot of stuff. That's why I say I like both. I wouldn't mind I know that someone, I can't remember who it was, home, Jacksonville, home, Jacksonville.
And one,
That's a little messy to me,
yeah.
but I don't think it's gonna change either. I don't. I just don't.
It's always Georgia that's wanting to change it,
Yeah, and
and I
I
understand that
I think
personally.
Kirby wants to change it.
That's
Whatever he
Kirby.
says in these press conferences, it seems like Kirby would prefer it to be a home and home. I don't know what's inside his head, but
Well,
that's the way it seems.
his point, which we can't prove, is that it would be. I mean, when he was talking to Tebow at media days, Kirby was like, "Well, you don't know that it wouldn't be the most electric atmosphere." I mean, we're going to have a discussion about what we can't prove. I mean, we know what we know about Georgia, Florida, and we know what I think my sort of, if you want to call it fear about changing that game is you are talking about something that generations of Georgia fans have built into their fandom, and then you would change it for recruiting. Now,
Yeah,
I don't think that's a good enough reason, and that's probably the best reason. I mean, it's not for money. It's for to try to get your program better. So Kirby is understandably selfishly looking at this and saying, I want another home game that's a big home game. But I think the rest of Georgiadom is saying, oh, that's awesome, man. You're about to get that. You're about to get that when the SEC goes to 9 games. Because he's correct. The home schedule is not what it needs to be, and Georgia never plays its biggest game at home, and it probably won't. The one caveat I will say, Ryan, is it is possible that because of some maneuvering by the league that that Georgia and Florida will have to go to a home and home just to balance the schedule for the SEC for a 2 year stretch. Um, Even that, I'm not sure that would happen. That's what happened in 13 with Georgia going to Auburn in back to back years. And that's why, and that's the other thing, like this year, and I'll stop talking, but this year, Georgia's a home team in Jacksonville. That means in the future, in even years, you'd have Georgia, Florida, Georgia, Auburn, and Georgia, Georgia Tech all at home the same year. Well, that doesn't make sense either. So, and Tennessee, by the way. So,
yeah.
come
It just
on.
doesn't balance. It just doesn't
No,
balance
no,
properly.
it won't. And you could
Um,
flip flop with Auburn, but they'd be all for that actually. And I think the Jackets would like that if they could. But now they flip flop with Clemson, so they're like, yeah, well, no, we're okay. Because Tech
yeah.
always wanted to flip flop Georgia because they had Clemson and Georgia in the same season. They finally flipped it a few years back. So um, I don't know. I mean, it's not the end of the world either way. I do think it would be particularly sad if they went away from it. And I'm no big fan of Jacksonville personally.
Yeah, it was all right last year. I think
That's
I had never been down there
that's
before.
what it's like.
All
That's what
this
it
all this
is.
hype about the world's largest. I just was like, well, I feel like I've seen it all. No, I just haven't seen it all, but I hadn't seen anything different.
Well, this time you're going to go to Frat Beach, which is a totally different
Yeah.
experience than the
Yeah, well, that's
game day.
different. I'm
The
talking about
game
the
day,
actual game
the
day game
game
Jags
day
deal.
is very grimy. There's a lot of bad parking. The traffic is awful. Um, the game, to some degree, I think you're not people who have not ever been down there when both teams are good at the same time. You're not getting the full experience because I can tell you, full on Gator fan is something to see, and you don't really see that when they're not good.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I mean, like I said, I don't really interact with many Florida fans that often.
yeah,
So, I mean, they really aren't they're not that close. The schools aren't that close.
no,
Georgia's a
they're
lot
7 hours
closer
apart.
to, so I mean, it's
Well,
always been a little
Georgia's
weird to me,
closer to
but
Carolina, Alabama, Auburn,
Tennessee,
Tennessee,
Auburn,
almost Kentucky. That's how far
They're
away.
closer to Mississippi State.
Yeah. So, I mean, Florida's always been the outlier, but it is Georgia's biggest game every year. It's just what it is, and I think Georgia is going to smash the Gators myself. I've watched too much of Florida. I'm going to watch them when we get off. Mm-mm.
Yeah, no,
Not this
I
year.
feel the same way. I've watched a good bit of Florida this year as well, and I don't see a team that beats Georgia. That's not what I see when I watch them. I see a team that's gonna have a really hard time.
All right. Well, thanks for watching. We'll see you on the website.